The hospital vending machine hummed beside a row of wilted flowers. I remember staring at the out of order sign taped across the glass while clutching a paper cup of coffee that tasted like cardboard and burnt hope. 10 years ago, he'd vanished without a word. Not a text, not a goodbye. Now his mother was standing in front of me, her eyes swollen, asking if I'd consider giving him a kidney. When you're 22 and naive, you think friendship will survive anything. Ours began in a dorm that smelled like ramen and damp carpet. Late night playlists, shared ramen packets, and plans to escape our hometowns that felt too small for our dreams. His name was Ryan Delgado, a marketing major with a grin that could turn an awkward silence into an inside joke. I was an engineering kid, buried in code and caffeine, and somehow he made everything human again. We were opposites. I followed structure. He thrived on chaos. He'd skip class to watch the sunrise over the football field. I'd stay up all night debugging a lab project. He said I was too serious, that I'd die from heartburn before 30. I said he was allergic to consequences, but every time I fell asleep in the library, it was his hoodie someone draped over me. Every time he bombed a quiz, I was the one covering for him. Our last semester felt like the start of something bigger. We talked about getting an apartment in Chicago, splitting rent, building our adult lives side by side. But graduation day came, and something shifted. He was distant, jittery, constantly checking his phone. When I asked what was wrong, he said, "You ever feel like the world's moving faster than you can run?" I laughed it off. I shouldn't have. The day after commencement, I got a text. "Hey man, sorry, need some time. Don't wait up." That was it. No follow-up. No reply when I called. His number went dead a week later. I tried finding him. Mutual friends, Facebook, old email chains. Nothing. It was like he'd dropped off the planet. At first, I told myself he just needed space. A year passed. Then two. Life moved on. Jobs, bills, family stuff. But there was this dull ache every time I thought of him. The kind of ache you can't explain to anyone without sounding pathetic. The hospital smell pulled me back. Antiseptic and fear. His mother's voice cracked as she spoke. "Please, Ethan, he's really not doing well." Her hair was streaked gray now, her cardigan frayed at the sleeves. She used to bake us lemon bars during finals. I remembered her kitchen, the smell of butter and sugar, the way Ryan teased her for hovering. Now she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "What happened to him?" I asked, my voice smaller than I expected. "Renal failure. They said it's chronic. He's been on the list, but time's running out." I let her words sink in, the irony cutting deep. The same guy who ghosted me without explanation was dying, and somehow I was the one standing here. "How did you even find me?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "He didn't want me to. But I saw your name in his old phone backups. You were listed as family." That word, family, hit like a punch. I told her I'd think about it. She nodded, clutching my hand with both of hers before leaving me in that humming hallway. The silence afterward was loud enough to feel physical. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch with the lights off, scrolling through old photos I hadn't deleted. Ryan in a backwards cap, his arms slung around my shoulder. Our last road trip to Michigan, the car breaking down in the rain. The memories didn't fade with time. They just changed shape. My phone buzzed around midnight. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Ethan?" His voice was thinner than I remembered, like someone trying to sound normal through pain. "Yeah," I said. "Guess it's been a while." He laughed softly, then coughed. "Yeah, you could say that." For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "I didn't expect you to pick up." "Why'd you call?" "Because I didn't know how else to say I'm sorry." It wasn't the apology I wanted. It was too late for that. I wanted the 10 years back where I defended him to everyone, where I'd filled silence with excuses he never earned. "I'm not looking for forgiveness," he said, maybe sensing it. "Just, I had to hear your voice." "Your mom told me," I said quietly, "about the kidneys." He exhaled, a long, weary sound. "I told her not to. I didn't want you to feel obligated." "Obligated?" I almost laughed. "You disappear for a decade, then call me when you need a part replacement?" "I deserve that," he said. I didn't respond. I just sat there watching the city lights blur outside my window. He continued, voice trembling. "I messed up, Ethan. More than you know. But if there's anything I can fix before I go..." "You could start with the truth," I said. The line went quiet. For a moment I thought he'd hung up. Then he whispered, "It wasn't just space I needed. It was protection." "Protection from what?" He hesitated. "From who?" We met the next day at Mercy General, a place that felt frozen in perpetual 2009. Pale green walls, humming lights, a faint echo of nurses' shoes down the corridor. He was thinner than I'd imagined. His hair, once thick and messy, was cropped short. His eyes looked older, haunted. He smiled weakly when he saw me. "You look the same." "You don't," I said before I could stop myself. He laughed, then winced, pressing a hand to his side. "Yeah, I guess time hits differently when your body starts quitting on you." We sat in the visitor lounge. He pulled out an old flip phone, scuffed and taped at the hinge. "Still using that antique?" I asked. He smirked. "Let's just say smartphones weren't safe for me anymore." Something about his tone made me uneasy. He saw it. "You ever keep a secret so long it starts rewriting your memory?" "Ryan, just tell me what happened." He leaned forward, his voice low. "After graduation, I got involved with a startup. Fast money, bad people. We were supposed to launch this social app, but it was a front. Data scraping, blackmail, stuff that could ruin lives. I tried to back out. Next thing I knew, I was getting threats. My laptop was wiped, my accounts locked. So I ran." I stared at him. "For 10 years?" He nodded. "They found my parents once. That's why I changed my name for a while. That's why I couldn't reach out. You could have told me." "I wanted to, but if they knew you were connected to me..." He trailed off. "I thought disappearing was protecting you." It sounded like an excuse, but something in his eyes made it hard to dismiss entirely. "Why me then?" I asked. "Why ask me for a kidney?" He looked down. "Because you're the only person I ever trusted, even after everything." The doctor came in mid-conversation, clipboard in hand. "We'll need to run some compatibility tests, Mr. Cole." I nodded automatically before realizing what I'd agreed to. Ryan's hopeful expression hit me like guilt I hadn't earned. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't decide what bothered me more. The fact that he'd vanished without a trace, or that a part of me still cared enough to consider saving him. I thought about how friendship works like bone. It breaks clean, but the ache lingers in weather changes. I got the call the next afternoon. We were a match. Ryan cried when I told him. I didn't. Something in me felt detached, like I was watching someone else's story play out. 2 weeks later, as surgery prep began, the hospital called me in for another consent meeting. The nurse handed me a folder with legal documents. At the bottom, a note in Ryan's handwriting. "If you're reading this, I probably didn't make it, but there's something in my locker. Tell the nurse to open it after the surgery." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. When I confronted him about it later, he just smiled faintly. "Old habits die hard. I just want to make sure you know the whole truth. If you know." "Ryan, stop talking like that." He looked at me for a long time. "Ethan, you still don't get it. That startup wasn't just a scam. It's why I'm sick." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "They experimented on us," he whispered. "Medical trials. We thought it was just a data project, but they used us as test subjects. Kidney filters, new meds, unapproved compounds. I didn't just run. I stole their research to expose them. That's why I'm on their list. And now they know where I am. My blood ran cold. You mean they could come after you again? He shook his head. No. They'll come after anyone who helps me. That was the first night I truly regretted answering his mother's call. The following days blurred. Consultations, paperwork, small talk that felt forced. But beneath it all was a quiet dread. I started noticing small things. A man in a leather jacket waiting near the parking lot 3 days in a row. The same unmarked car idling near the hospital entrance at night. Ryan insisted it was paranoia. I wanted to believe him. But when his mother called one evening, whispering that someone had broken into her house and rifled through his old boxes, I knew it wasn't. Still, I showed up every morning. I told myself I was doing it for closure, not out of loyalty. 3 days before the surgery, Ryan asked if I'd take a walk with him. We shuffled through the hospital garden, him in his gown and IV stand, me pushing the pole like we were back on one of our midnight college walks. I used to think you hated me, he said quietly. I did, I admitted. Do you still? I hesitated. I don't know what I feel. He nodded. That's fair. We stood there, surrounded by overgrown roses and the smell of antiseptic drifting in from the open doors. Ethan, he said, his voice suddenly sharp, if something happens to me, don't trust the hospital administrator. Her name's Dr. Larkin. She's one of them. I frowned. You're serious? He nodded. Check her LinkedIn, her old employer. You'll see. It sounded insane. But that night, curiosity won. I looked her up, and what I found made my stomach drop. She'd worked for the same biotech company Ryan mentioned, the one that supposedly ran the trials. I didn't sleep at all that night. When dawn came, the air outside my window was a bruised shade of blue. I got in my car, drove to the hospital, and sat there in the parking lot until my knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Ryan wasn't lying. But I had no idea what to do with the truth. Should I still go through with the surgery? Should I walk away and leave him to fate he'd created himself? Inside, nurses were prepping him already. I caught a glimpse through the glass. Ryan smiling faintly, IV line trailing from his arm. For a moment, it looked like peace. But I knew better. Peace was just another word for surrender. That's when my phone buzzed again. An anonymous text with a single sentence. If you care about your friend, don't let that surgery happen. I looked up toward the ward, and for the first time in years, I didn't know whether saving him would destroy us both. The sound of a heart monitor flatlining cuts through a hallway like a blade. I remember that pitch, high, thin, impossible to unhear, because I froze in place when it echoed from Ryan's room. For a second, everything inside me just stopped. Then nurses rushed past, and the door slammed shut behind them. It turned out to be someone else's room, not his, but that sound stayed with me. It felt like a warning. The morning of the surgery, the hospital felt quieter than usual. Too quiet. The fluorescent lights hummed low, the vending machines half empty. I'd signed the consent forms the night before, my name printed beside his on a list that made me feel more like a statistic than a friend. When I walked into his room, Ryan was sitting up, pale but calm. You actually showed, he said. Don't sound so surprised, I said, forcing a smirk. He smiled weakly. Guess I still don't know how to read people. Guess you still don't know when to stop talking, I replied. We both laughed. Short, nervous laughs that didn't reach the eyes. Then a nurse came in to adjust his IV, and I noticed the way her badge glinted under the light. Larkin, M. My stomach twisted. Dr. Larkin, the same name Ryan had warned me about. She smiled politely like nothing was wrong. You must be the donor. Ethan, right? We're grateful you're doing this. Her tone was smooth, professional. Too smooth. When she left, Ryan watched her go, then looked at me. You saw her name tag? Yeah. Don't let her near me alone. That night, before the surgery, I drove home to grab a few things. It was raining, thin sheets of drizzle that turned the street silver under the lamps. As I was unlocking my door, I noticed something. A small envelope taped to my mailbox. No name, no address. Just my initials, scribbled in blue ink. Inside was a flash drive and a note that read, "If you want to know the truth about Delgado, open this before morning." My heart started hammering. The handwriting wasn't Ryan's. I booted up my laptop, plugged in the drive, and waited. A folder popped up, Betrayal Exposure. Inside, dozens of PDFs, lab reports, patient records, all marked confidential. And then I saw it. Patient RD, Delgado Ryan. The notes described a renal filtration prototype trial, unauthorized, performed in 2015. The compounds listed were experimental nanopolymers, chemicals designed to strengthen kidney function, but known to cause irreversible scarring with long-term exposure. Under the section Donor Candidate Crossmatch, my name appeared, E. Cole. I stared at the screen until the text blurred. The file date was recent, 2 weeks ago, meaning someone had accessed my medical records before I even agreed to donate. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, the glow of the monitor painting my apartment in cold light. By sunrise, I made a decision. I wasn't going through with the surgery. When I arrived at the hospital, Ryan was already prepped. IV in, monitors blinking steady. His mother sat beside him, gripping his hand. She looked up when I entered, her eyes wet. "Ethan, thank you," she said softly. "You're saving his life." Couldn't bring myself to answer. Ryan caught my expression immediately. What happened? I glanced at the nurses in the hall. "We need to talk. Alone." When his mother left, I leaned close. "Someone sent me documents about the trials, about you and me." His face drained of color. "They found you." "Who?" "The people behind the company, Betrayal." "What do they want?" I demanded. He looked at the door, lowered his voice. "To make sure I never talk. And if they can't shut me up, they'll erase every trace of what they did, even if it means burying the evidence inside you." "What does that mean?" He hesitated. "The kidney they're taking out of me isn't clean, Ethan. It's damaged. The compounds they tested on me, they're still in my system. If they transplant it, they'll say you died from rejection, not contamination. You'll be their test subject next." I felt my breath catch. "You're telling me they'd kill me to cover this up?" He nodded. "That's why I didn't want you to come. But you did, so now you're part of it." "Then why agree to the surgery?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Because if they think it's going through, maybe I can buy us time. Maybe we can expose them before they do it to someone else." His hands trembled as he spoke. "In my locker. The code is 7349. There's a hard drive. Everything's there. The names, the funding, the approvals. If anything happens to me, take it and go to the press." I stared at him, torn between anger and disbelief. "Ryan, you're not some vigilante. You need help." He shook his head. "I'm past that." Before I could say more, Dr. Larkin appeared at the door. "We're ready for you both." Her voice was calm, but something in her eyes felt sharp, like she was watching every reaction. I followed her down the corridor, my pulse pounding. Ryan was wheeled ahead of me, his head turned slightly toward mine. "Trust no one," he whispered. As they rolled him into the operating room, I slipped away toward the staff lockers. My hands shook as I punched in the code. The door clicked open. Inside, under a stack of old magazines, was a small silver hard drive labeled Evidence. I grabbed it and shoved it into my pocket. And that's when I heard footsteps behind me. "Mr. Cole?" said a voice. I turned. Dr. Larkin stood there, her expression unreadable. "You shouldn't be back here." I forced a weak laugh. "Just got lost looking for the restroom." She smiled, the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "Then you're headed the wrong way." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "If you care about your friend, leave. Right now. Walk away and forget everything you think you've learned." Her tone wasn't threatening. It was pleading. That made it worse. I didn't reply. I just brushed past her and kept walking until I hit the elevator. My reflection in the stainless steel doors looked foreign. Pale, drawn, shaking. When I reached the parking lot, I sat in my car and opened my phone. A text from an unknown number flashed on screen. "He's not the only one with his blood on file." Then another. "They're already looking for you." I started the engine, hands trembling. Rain pounded the windshield like static. I didn't know where to go, but I knew staying wasn't an option. I had the drive. I had proof. I just needed time. I was about to pull out when I saw something in the rearview mirror. A figure standing by the hospital doors watching me. Dr. Larkin. Only she wasn't alone. Two men in dark suits stood beside her. I hit the gas and drove until the hospital disappeared behind the fog. My heart felt like a drum in my throat. At a red light, I opened the glove compartment and shoved the hard drive inside. My mind replayed Ryan's words. "If anything happens to me, take it to the press." But before I could plan my next move, my phone buzzed again. This time with a message that froze me completely. "We have Ryan." I turned the car around. By the time I got back, the front desk nurse said he'd been moved to a secure wing. No details, no explanations. Just a room number that didn't exist in the hospital directory. Something in my gut screamed that this wasn't a transfer. It was containment. I tried calling his mother. No answer. I went back to the hallway where I'd last seen him, but the doors were locked. Card access only. I could hear faint voices inside, machines beeping. Then, silence. I didn't think. I just ran. Through the stairwell, up 2 flights, into a maintenance corridor. I remembered from my college internship days. It led directly behind the surgical wing. I pressed my ear to the door. Inside, I heard a voice. Calm, clinical. "Begin the extraction." Then another voice, hoarse, barely audible. "Ethan, don't." It was him. I pushed the door open. What I saw inside didn't look like a hospital operation. It looked like containment. Machines I didn't recognize, lights too bright, monitors flashing streams of code instead of vitals. Ryan was strapped down, eyes darting, mouth covered. Dr. Larkin turned sharply. "Get him out of here!" she yelled. 2 orderlies moved toward me. I lunged for the IV pole, swinging it hard enough to knock one off balance. The other grabbed my arm, twisting it, but adrenaline made pain irrelevant. I ripped the IV line from Ryan's arm and shouted his name. The alarms blared. Somewhere in the chaos, someone hit a switch and the room lights dimmed. Ryan's voice broke through the noise. "The drive! Run!" So I did. I bolted out the side exit, alarms still wailing, blood on my hands, maybe his, maybe mine. When I reached the parking lot, the men in suits were gone. The rain had stopped. The world looked disturbingly normal. I sat in my car, shaking, staring at the hospital through the windshield. It looked smaller than before. And I realized, whether he lived or died, Ryan wasn't the only one who'd been pulled into something impossible to escape. That night, I checked every news outlet, every hospital update. Nothing. No mention of a patient named Ryan Delgado. No surgery on record. No attending physician named Dr. Larkin. It was as if neither of them had ever existed. Except I still had the drive. And I wasn't sure how long before someone came looking for it. Or for me. I used to think secrets rotted in silence. Turns out they breed in motion. The longer you run, the more they multiply. 3 days after I fled the hospital, I was still looking over my shoulder every time I stopped at a light. Every passing car looked like the same black sedan. Every face in the gas station reflection looked like someone following me. I holed up in a cheap motel off Interstate 80, the kind of place where the carpets smell like bleach and smoke, and the clerk doesn't ask for ID if you pay in cash. I set the hard drive on the desk next to a styrofoam cup of coffee that had gone cold before I'd even tasted it. The label, Evidence, looked like a dare. When I finally plugged it in, folders opened one after another: clinical trials, batch 7B, volunteer IDs, financial logs, subject imaging. Each file was a piece of a story I wasn't ready to believe. Ryan hadn't been exaggerating. The trial was real. Kidney filtration compounds tested on undocumented participants, then quietly extended to college programs under fake innovation grants. Some of the consent forms were signed with student names I recognized. And buried in the data logs, I found my own name tagged under secondary sample. They hadn't just screened me as a donor. They'd been collecting my blood years before, during a campus wellness drive Ryan had convinced me to join. I felt sick. That night I called the only person I still trusted a little, Marcus, an old college roommate who'd gone into investigative journalism. We hadn't spoken in years, but when he heard my voice, he didn't even say hello. "Jesus, Ethan, you sound like you're calling from a bunker." "Close enough," I said. "I need your help." I told him about Ryan, the hospital, the drive. I left out the part where I'd practically assaulted a pair of orderlies. He was quiet for a long time, then said, "You realize what you're describing is whistleblower-level stuff? If this is real, it's not just corporate fraud. It's human experimentation." "That's what I'm afraid of." "Send me copies. All of it. Don't move until you hear from me." I spent the next hour compressing files and uploading them through a burner account. When the progress bar finally hit 100%, I felt the first breath of relief since everything began. It lasted maybe 20 seconds, because the motel's power went out. At first, I thought it was a grid surge. Storm, old wiring, something innocent. Then I saw headlights cut through the blinds, still as a predator's gaze. I unplugged the laptop, grabbed the hard drive, and moved to the bathroom. My pulse thundered in my ears. Outside, a door slammed, boots on gravel. Someone knocked once, twice. "Mr. Cole," a voice called, polite, calm, too calm. "Maintenance, checking the fuse box." I didn't answer. The doorknob rattled. I climbed out the bathroom window barefoot, landing hard on wet asphalt, and ran. I ended up behind a row of dumpsters behind a closed diner. The rain had started again, fine and relentless. I crouched there, clutching the drive like a lifeline, trying not to cough. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One message from Marcus. "Got the files. Don't come back here. They know." That was the last thing he ever sent. His number went dead afterward. By morning, the motel was gone. Not physically, but online. Every listing, every photo, scrubbed, like it had never existed. I realized I couldn't keep running blind. I needed to know if Ryan was even alive. Hospitals keep backups of everything, even when they erase the public trail. I remembered Ryan once mentioning the Mercy General Research Archive, a server housed off-site for compliance. Access required credentials from any attending physician. So I went back. Not through the main entrance, through the loading dock. Wearing a janitor's uniform I'd bought from a thrift store, I pushed a mop bucket past security cameras that didn't seem to move. Every step smelled of ammonia and adrenaline. On the third floor, I found a locked door labeled Records B. A badge reader blinked red. I held my breath, then swiped an old visitor's pass across the panel. It turned green. Inside were rows of servers humming like insects. On one monitor, a command prompt blinked. I typed Delgado, Ryan. No result. Then I tried subject RD. A single file appeared. Status, deceased. Time of death, 03:12 a.m. The timestamp was from the night I'd escaped. I don't know how long I stood there staring. My mind refused to process the word. Deceased. He'd told me to run, and I had. He'd stayed behind. A folder next to his ID read Asset Transfer Protocol. Inside was an image, a CT scan that wasn't Ryan's. It was mine. Same blood type, same markers. The title beneath it, Replacement Candidate, Pending Acquisition. That was when the truth landed hard and simple. I wasn't the donor. I was the next experiment. I yanked the drive from the server and bolted, alarms shrieking as red lights filled the hall. I didn't stop until I reached the fire escape, lungs burning. Outside, dawn was just starting to smear the sky. At the edge of the parking lot, a black SUV idled. For a split second, I thought about surrendering, walking up, handing them the drive, ending this nightmare. Then I remembered Ryan's mother, her trembling hands, and the word family written in his contact list. I ran again. By the time I reached Chicago city limits, I ditched the car, the phone, even my wallet. I bought a prepaid flip phone from a gas station and called the only number I dared, a small-time legal nonprofit Marcus had once mentioned, the Safe Record. A woman answered. Whistleblower line. This call may be recorded. Name? I hesitated. Ethan Cole. I have evidence of illegal medical trials. People are dead. She paused. You're not the first to say that name. Ryan Delgado, right? My breath caught. You know him? We represented a class action claim 5 years ago. It never reached court. All the plaintiffs withdrew suddenly. Settlements under NDA. What happened to them? Most relocated. 2 disappeared. Then you'll help me? Another pause. If you can get here, we'll protect you. She gave me an address in the Loop, 8th floor of a crumbling office tower near the river. When I arrived, the building looked abandoned. Dusty windows, peeling paint, no sign. I climbed the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The office at the top was small, lit by a single lamp. A woman in a gray blazer sat behind a desk, tapping a pen. Her badge read M. Larkin. My stomach turned to stone. Dr. Larkin? I whispered. She looked up, expression unreadable. Mr. Cole, I told you to walk away. Where's Ryan? Gone, she said simply. And if you want to stay alive, you'll give me the drive. I pulled it from my pocket but didn't move closer. You killed him. She shook her head slowly. No, we saved him as long as we could. You don't understand what he was carrying. What's in his blood? You both were exposed. You think this is about kidneys? It's about patents, ownership. They don't need your body. They need your DNA. Her voice softened. You leak that data, Ethan, and you'll destroy more than you save. Walk away while you still can. I should have run then, but all I could think about was the word she'd used, ownership. I pressed the drive flat on the table. Then we both know this ends one of 2 ways by law, I said. Either it disappears with me, or everyone sees it. She studied me for a long moment, then sighed. You're just like him. I turned to leave. Behind me, she said quietly, the next time you get blood work done, check your chart. They already have what they need. Outside, the city hummed like nothing had changed. People walking dogs, traffic lights blinking, lives moving forward. I walked until my legs gave out and collapsed onto a bench by the river. I stared at the water, the flash drive still warm in my palm. Somewhere in that endless current, Ryan's voice still echoed. Trust no one. I didn't know if he was really gone. I didn't know if I just doomed myself by surviving him. But I knew one thing. The story wasn't over. Not yet. The flash drive was hot against my palm, almost burning through my skin. I didn't know if it was the metal warming from my hand or the paranoia setting in, but I couldn't let go. Every time I tried, my fingers clenched tighter, like my body understood before my mind did that once I dropped it, it would all be gone. I sat by the river until the sun climbed high enough to make the water glitter. The city moved around me. Joggers, office workers, food trucks setting up. Everyone oblivious to the fact that in my pocket sat proof that people were being turned into property. A garbage barge drifted past. For a moment, I considered throwing the drive in. One flick of the wrist, and I could pretend none of this ever happened. But when I closed my eyes, I saw Ryan's face under those hospital lights, whispering, "Run." I stood and walked. No direction, no plan, just motion. By noon, I'd made it to Union Station. I bought a one-way ticket west under a fake name and sat in the corner of the waiting area, watching reflections in the glass more than the trains themselves. That's when I noticed her. Same gray blazer, hair pulled back tight. Dr. Larkin. She wasn't looking at me. Not directly, but she didn't have to. She just stood there, scanning the crowd, her gaze sweeping slow and methodical. I slipped out through a side exit and into the midday heat. I walked 6 blocks before ducking into a thrift shop. The clerk barely looked up as I bought a duffel bag and an old denim jacket. In the back corner, I swapped shirts and shoved my phone into the bottom of a bin of mismatched shoes. No GPS, no signal, no trail. I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere I could plug in the drive without being found. I ended up in a public library. The kind built in the 70s, all concrete walls and humming vents. The computers were old, but the anonymity was perfect. When I connected the drive, a password prompt appeared, something I hadn't seen before. 3 letters, 3 numbers. I tried the obvious ones first. Ryan 23, 7349, family. Nothing worked. Then I remembered the photo in his dorm. The one of us standing in front of the college fountain. On the back, he'd written, Fall 12, the year we got out alive. I typed Fall 12. The screen blinked, then opened. Inside was a folder titled Truth. No PDFs this time, just a series of video files. I clicked the first one. Ryan appeared on screen, thinner, older, his face drawn but alert. The background was a hotel room. Curtain drawn, lamp flickering. If you're watching this, Ethan, I probably didn't make it. I'm sorry for everything I couldn't say before. My throat closed. You remember that startup? It wasn't just a scam. They were collecting biometric data, DNA, neural responses, even memory indexes from volunteers. The drug they tested wasn't to fix kidneys. It was to make the body filter toxins faster, survive longer under stress. Military contract stuff. I found out too late. He leaned closer to the camera. They didn't just test me. They used my results to build new filters. Synthetic ones. That's why my kidneys failed. They were never supposed to handle the load. And they're using the data from our campus samples to design replacements. Synthetic organs. Patent ready. You and I, we were the prototypes. He sighed, rubbing his face. If Dr. Larkin finds you, don't trust her. She's not evil. She's trapped. They all are. But if she says they already have what they need, she's right. They've mapped our DNA to a new product line. Human tissue coded as intellectual property. He looked down, then back up. Don't let them own what makes us human. The video cut to static. I sat there, heart pounding. Around me, the library was quiet except for the low hum of computers and someone coughing near the circulation desk. It was surreal, like reading a death letter in the middle of a grocery store. I copied everything to a cloud server under an encrypted alias. Then I unplugged the drive and slipped it into my jacket pocket. When I stood, I caught movement in the reflection of the computer screen. A man in a black coat standing near the entrance. No library card, no backpack, just watching. I didn't look back again. That night, I hid in a 24-hour diner outside Joliet. I ordered pancakes I couldn't eat and stared at the neon sign flickering in the rain. The waitress refilled my coffee without asking. At 1 a.m., a message appeared in my encrypted email inbox. We received your upload. Verification in progress. Keep the drive safe. You're not alone. No signature. For the first time in days, I let myself believe maybe there was a way out. Maybe Ryan hadn't died for nothing. Then I heard the bell over the door. The man from the library stepped inside. He walked straight to my booth and slid in across from me like we'd planned a meeting. He looked mid-40s, plain suit, pale eyes, no badge, no name. "Mr. Cole," he said softly, "you've been very hard to find." "Then stop looking," I said. He smiled faintly. "You misunderstand. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to make a deal." "I'm not interested." "Everyone's interested," he said, setting a folded envelope on the table. "Inside is a new identity, 10 years of financial security, and a relocation guarantee. In exchange, you delete every copy of that data and hand over the drive." I looked at the envelope. "And if I don't?" He didn't answer. He just reached for his coffee, stirred it twice, and said, "Do you know how many donors go missing each year? Less than 2% ever make the news." He slid out of the booth and left. The envelope stayed. I sat there for an hour staring at it. When I finally opened it, there was no money, just a photo. Me, taken that morning at the library, and written on the back, one sentence: "This isn't just about Ryan anymore." I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing Ryan's voice. "Don't let them own what makes us human." By dawn, I made my choice. I emailed the entire encrypted archive to every major news outlet, every whistleblower board, every investigative reporter I could find. If they wanted silence, they'd get the opposite. And within 12 hours, the story broke. Headline: Leaked documents reveal secret biotech trials using unwitting students as DNA prototypes. The footage of Ryan's video went viral before the company could issue a denial. Lawsuits poured in. Congressional hearings were announced. The word synthetic organ trended for a week straight, but I didn't celebrate. Because 2 days later, another headline appeared. Anonymous source in biotech leak found dead in motel fire. They didn't name him, but I didn't have to read between the lines. Marcus. The relief I'd felt curdled into something heavier, guilt mixed with inevitability. That night, I packed my bag again. I walked to the bridge where I'd last sat with Ryan years ago, drinking cheap beer and talking about what we'd be at 30. He'd said he wanted to build something that outlived him. I laughed then. I didn't now. I dropped the original flash drive into the river and watched the ripples swallow it whole. But as I turned to leave, I saw something that made me stop. Across the street, under a street lamp, stood Dr. Larkin. She didn't move, didn't chase, just nodded once, almost like a warning, or maybe gratitude. Then she turned and disappeared into the fog. I thought that was the end of it. Until a week later, a package arrived at my new apartment under no return address. Inside was a medical bracelet, stainless steel, patient, R, Delgado blood type, O+. Status, transferred. No death date, no facility name, transferred. I don't know where he is, or if he's still alive. But sometimes, when I pass by hospitals and hear the faint hum of machines through the glass, I swear I can hear his laugh. The one from our dorm room, the one that made everything feel possible. And I wonder if maybe he's still out there, fighting the same battle in a different way. Because some ghosts don't haunt to scare you. They haunt to remind you to keep running. It was 2:17 in the morning when my doorbell rang. 3 quick chimes. Urgent, deliberate, human. Not the kind you mistake for a drunk neighbor or delivery error. For a long moment, I didn't move. The apartment was dark except for the laptop's blue glow across the table. I'd been rereading the headline again and again. The one that called me a whistleblower source close to the investigation, though no one had said my name out loud yet. I thought I'd done it, that I'd survived it. Then the doorbell rang a 4th time. Through the peephole, I saw a man's face half lit by the hallway bulb. Early 50s, maybe. Brown coat, glasses fogged from the cold. He wasn't security, wasn't corporate. He looked tired, not dangerous, but the badge in his hand, small, metallic, caught the light. "Mr. Cole?" he called softly. "My name's Agent Barrett. I'm with the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Human Research Oversight. We need to talk." I opened the door halfway. "You've got ID?" He flashed it. Real seal, holographic print, not a fake. "It's about the documents you leaked and about Ryan Delgado." The sound of that name in a stranger's mouth made my stomach twist. "Come in," I said. He sat at my kitchen table, scanning the room as if memorizing exits. The laptop screen still glowed behind him. Ryan's paused face frozen mid-sentence. Barrett noticed it. "Hard to watch?" he asked. "Harder not to," I said. He nodded. "We've seen the same footage. The case you exposed. It's legitimate. But there's more. The media's only touched what the company lost control of. There are deeper archives we're trying to recover before they vanish. You might be the only person with access." I frowned. I uploaded everything I had. "Not everything," he said, and slid a thin file across the table. Inside were printed screenshots, fragments of code, medical charts, but one page stopped me cold. Subject 21B, R. Delgado. Status, relocated to federal custody. Not deceased, not transferred. Relocated. I looked up. "You're telling me he's alive?" Barrett hesitated. "Not in the sense you're thinking. He's under protective containment. The biotech material in his system has become unstable. He's changing." I felt my pulse climb. "You mean mutating?" He shook his head. "Not like that. Think more. Integrating. His organs are replicating the synthetic structures. He's the only living hybrid we've ever confirmed. He's still human, but the filtration network inside him is self-sustaining. We're trying to keep him alive without triggering full conversion." "Full conversion," I repeated, the words tasting metallic. Barrett leaned forward. "We think he's building antibodies to the synthetic matter, meaning his body is learning to reject what they made him into. If we can stabilize it, it could save millions of people poisoned by industrial waste, radiation, anything. But if the system rejects the code completely, he dies. Violently." He paused. "That's why we need you." I stared at him. "Me? Why?" He tapped the file. "You were the closest genetic match. His body adapted using traces of your data from those campus tests. If we can analyze your current blood sequence, we might recreate the stabilizing proteins. He trusted you with his life before. Now we need that. Trust again." Every cell in me screamed no. I'd spent months running from these people, from labs, from suits, from quiet threats wrapped in polite letters. And now they were back, this time wearing government credentials. "What happens if I say no?" Barrett's voice softened. "Then his system crashes within weeks, and we lose him. Maybe the science too, but that's your call." He slid a contact card across the table. "Think about it. We're at the temporary facility off Route 41, restricted access. Bring the drive if you still have it." Then he stood and left, leaving the faint smell of rain and old paper behind. I sat there until sunrise. The city outside was waking up. Garbage trucks, morning news, people living normal lives. I hadn't felt part of that world in a long time. When the light finally touched the edge of the table, I made my choice. The facility sat behind chain-link fences near the lake. Half lab, half prison. The guard at the gate scanned my ID longer than necessary before waving me through. Inside, the air smelled of metal and sanitizer. Barrett met me in the lobby. "You came." "Show me," I said. We passed through 2 security doors before reaching a dim observation room. Behind the glass, on a hospital bed surrounded by humming machines, lay Ryan. He looked older, gaunt, pale, wires blooming from his arms. But he was breathing. His chest rose steady under the sheet. "Ryan," I whispered, pressing a hand to the glass. He stirred, turning his head. When his eyes met mine, the world seemed to contract to that one moment. All the noise, the years, the betrayal collapsing into something like relief. He smiled weakly. "You still owe me a beer." They let me in for 10 minutes. No recording, no phones, just us. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "Guess I'm bad at listening." He chuckled, then winced. "Figures." I sat by the bed. "They say you're changing." He nodded. "Feels like drowning slow. Half of me fights the other half. But they're trying to fix it. Said you could help." "Do you want me to?" He looked at the ceiling for a long time before answering. "I don't know if I deserve it, but if it stops them from doing this to anyone else, yeah, do it." I took his hand. It felt warm. Too warm, like there was a current under the skin. His pulse fluttered unevenly. "You remember what you told me in the dorm?" he asked. "That people don't change, they just learn new excuses?" I nodded. He smiled faintly. "You were wrong. People change. Sometimes too much." After they drew my blood, Barrett asked if I wanted to stay for observation. I declined. I'd seen enough hospitals to last a lifetime. As I was leaving, a nurse handed me a sealed envelope. "He wanted you to have this," she said. In the car, I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with handwriting I knew by heart. "If this works, don't wait for me. If it doesn't, don't blame yourself. Either way, keep your promise. Don't let them own us." At the bottom, he'd drawn a tiny sketch, 2 stick figures on a dorm roof under stars. That was 3 months ago. Since then, the world's been unraveling. Leaked court orders, congressional hearings, bioethics protests. Some say the biotech company's entire board vanished overseas. Others claim the government absorbed their research. I haven't seen Ryan again. No one has. But every few weeks, I get an encrypted email. No sender, no subject, just a single line of text. "Still learning to breathe." And somehow, I know it's him. These days, I don't look over my shoulder as much. I got a job repairing circuit boards, a small apartment with a view of the river. Some nights, I walk to the bridge and stand where I threw the flash drive. I tell the water that we made it, that his ghost kept his word. Because ghosts aren't always gone. Sometimes they evolve. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.